Welcome back to the Midnight Ride. Over the weekend, I watched Transformers 1 with my family. Back in September, I had a free pass to the movies, some perk that I got somewhere, and I was trying to decide what to see. It came down to three different options, and I narrowed it down to I'd heard good things about the Beetlejuice sequel. The Transformers movie was out, and there was one other that I can't remember. And I decided to go to see Beetlejuice. I was kind of getting in the mood for something, Halloween-ish, and it was fine. I did a video after I saw it, and it was here's the rundown. There was a lot going on in the plot. And, it's taken flack for being a really convoluted movie, and I think that's a fair criticism. Nevertheless, I still had a good time watching it for the most part. But I will admit, I wish instead that I had gone to see Transformers. The reason that I didn't is that I've had a couple of experiences in the theater watching Transformers movies that I just never want to have again, and I was really burned out on it. So I was always a huge fan of Transformers growing up. As a kid, that was my first big thing that I was into, and it was kind of sustained all throughout my childhood. At different times, my brothers and I got into other stuff, but Transformers was the constant. That was my thing. I remember riding my bike to the grocery store that had a video rental place inside it to rent the '86 movie on VHS, in the late '90s. I was committed. I rented that movie a couple of times. And then in the early 2000s, they started making whispers that hey, we might be able to pull off actual Transformers with CGI. And then 2007 rolled around, and man, I was showing up to movies in the summer of 2007 just to see the trailer for Transformers on the big screen. Movies that I had no interest in, but I knew that the trailer was going to be on it. And I was all right, I'll go see this movie. But mainly I'm there for that 2-minute Transformers trailer. I'm committed. I was the level 7 susceptible. I saw Transformers 2007 in the theater 5 times. I was 23. I was the target market. Hey, here's a dumb kid who's a spaz, but still gets this hot girl and a cool car, and he saves the world, and Linkin Park is on in the background. The meme about that being peak American culture, not wrong. I did recently try to rewatch that movie now that I'm a grumpy old 40-year-old man, and I got some problems with it. But frick, I loved that first movie. I defended the second one, even though it didn't deserve it, but nobody should have trusted me back then. Third one was an improvement, and I was all right, cool. The hope was always that they would just get better, that they would listen to feedback, and that they would get better. And then I saw the fourth one in 2014, and I felt like some of the wind was coming out of the sails at that point. I remember going to the midnight showing. I couldn't get my brother to go with me; he'd come with me to the last couple, and I just felt it was kind of depressing. Nobody wants to come to this anymore. It might be a little bit tired, and also this one sucks. They're not thinking about the plot. There's weird aliens and stuff. There's Stanley Tucci dropping F-bombs and talking about transformium as an element. The Dinobots are in this for no reason. We tacked a second ending to this movie that's in Hong Kong. What is going on? They make less sense every single time. And I had this epiphany in 2014 watching Age of Extinction. I thought, I am the problem. This keeps happening because I am enabling it. And so I intentionally avoided the one in 2017, The Last Night. And I have proudly not seen that movie, and I never will. And then the trailers dropped for Bumblebee, and as I became convinced again, it's okay, awesome. Somebody's in charge of this that is not Michael Bay, and they've caught the vision, and it's perfect. Unfortunately, I think at that point, too many other people had that experience that I had in 2014 that realized that Transformers movies are just dumb, and they're not going to get better. And that was a crying shame because Bumblebee underperformed at the box office, and it is still the best live-action movie. The franchise took a 5-year hiatus. It came back last summer with Rise of the Beasts, and I predictably got excited again because, hey, a new crew is in charge of it. Maybe they're going to do what I've been hoping they'll do this entire time, where they will learn from the failures of previous movies. They'll listen to fan feedback, and they'll make something great. No, the movie was made by some guy from Brooklyn about some characters from Brooklyn, and in the end, like Brooklyn saves the world in Brooklyn. And hey, let's jaunt down to Machu Picchu real quick, and then we'll have a CGI smash fest at the end, and we'll have some early '90s hip hop, and that'll be the end of the movie. Um, I walked out of that movie like thinking about specific scenes that were cool, but I was also doing that thing that I hate doing, where I was trying to convince myself that it was better than it was. And I took my kids to see it. My sons wanted to see it the next day. I was like, maybe this will be like a cool father son bonding thing. They'll check it out. They'll like it. We watched it. They never talked about it again. And I was like, okay, nope, this movie sucks. It's better than some of the Bay movies, but I was just tired. Like once again, I broke my promise to myself that I wasn't going to be the gullible sap, and then there I was spending $40 on this movie in a week because I saw it myself and then I took my kids. Like it was just bad. So all of that left a really sour taste in my mouth. And then when they announced that they were doing this Transformers One movie, I was like, man, now they're just gonna like not listen to kids or not listen to fans. They're gonna make something for kids. They're gonna do a How to Train Your Dragon version of Transformers, and it's just how we get our cogs. This is how we get the ability to transform. That's what the trailer was saying, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to participate in that. So that is ultimately why I decided not to go see it when it was in theaters 2 months ago, and the movie underperformed. And to make matters worse, Hasbro has had so many flops lately, making movies of their toys, aka 2-hour commercials for their toys, that they're no longer going to co-finance films, and that's going to make the prospect of a sequel very, very difficult, which absolutely sucks because for the first time in 17 years of Transformers movies, they actually got one right. Bumblebee they got right. Like Bumblebee was great, still had some minor flaws here and there. This one, I have very, very few things to complain about it. Yes, it is an origin story for Optimus and Megatron, and yes, they can't transform at first. It is not an origin of transforming. The marketing got that wrong. If anything, like this is kind of act 2 of a 3-act story, as the characters are realizing that their planet had been invaded and conquered, and the current ruling class was lying to them about the situation on the surface, and that they had been stripped of the ability to transform at birth. It doesn't get into any technical details of what birth means for a transformer, but there's a specific component that allows them to transform from a vehicle into a robot, and that got yoinked out of them by this corrupt leadership that was forcing them to work and harvest energy from the core of the planet, which was then being shipped off to alien overlords. And the story is like not just individual arcs for Optimus and Megatron, but also the arc of their friendship turning from brothers into enemies. And you can say that you're going to do that and then just kind of write it in a hacky way. And there are definitely hack writers that'll do it. They'll be like, hey, Act 1, we're friends. Act 2, question mark. Act 3, we're enemies. No, like every step of this journey felt earned. Every like little progression for Optimus moving towards being the selfless hero and realizing what his strengths and also what his limitations were, as well as Megatron like going from being an absolute believer in the system to realizing that he'd been enslaved and exploited, and responding to that with just absolute rage, like a system that he had defended, coming to realize that it was wrong. Well, I could kind of relate to that. Sitting in the theater at midnight in 2014, realizing that I'd been propping up and defending these movies, and nope, these actually suck. The writing was just superb. If I've got 2 complaints, it's this. One, I think they leaned too hard into making Alita 1 the unlikable girl boss. The way that she was written, it was just too like, you guys suck, and I'm better than all of you. And she did have a couple of moments where she also realized what her limitations were, and she gave Prime a pep talk when he needed it. And I think that's fine for 2 characters to have. You can read it one way or another, but I think it worked for what it needed to be for the story. The other thing was I'm not a huge fan of how they handled Bumblebee in this one. I get what they were going for. I think that they tried too hard to make him be the comic relief, and that whole joke that they did from the trailer where he wanted everybody to call him Badassatron, they repeated that joke way too many times. Because the perfect number for a joke in a film is two. At the third, you are right there playing with fire with it being a perfect landing and overplayed. And he said that like 7 or 8 times in the movie. So, yeah. Uh, on top of all that, the celebrity voice acting, I'm of two minds about that. One of them being that I guess technically it can be a draw, but it can also cause your budget costs to balloon. And while I'm not an investor in these films, and in the sense that I'm expecting a return on the investment, I do want them to be successful and great so that there can be more of them. And when you spend a certain amount of money on acting talent for actors that aren't voice actors, uh, you you raise the bar for how well the movie needs to perform in order to justify a sequel. And based on the writing and the direction and the execution, this one deserves a sequel. This one was incredibly well done, but it underperformed, and I think it's because it was burdened by the legacy of the bad movies that came before it, one of which had just come out a year prior. So that's where we're at with the Transformers franchise. But I'm going to encourage you guys, if you've got Paramount Plus, watch it while it's on there in this window. Um, Once it comes out on DVD, I guess later this month, I'm going to grab a copy of it. Like, I want a physical copy of it because it'll be worth having and it'll stand up to multiple viewings. One final thing that I'm going to say is this impression that I got in like the first 20 minutes with Orion Pax and D16, that's Proto Optimus and Proto Megatron. Uh, in the beginning, like there were very, very strong tones of Red Rising in their story. Like, oh, we're miners. Oh, it's dangerous. Oh, there's a cave in. Oh, we've got to hit quota. There's a system. We got to believe in it. Oh, crap. We go to the surface. Things are different here than how they told us. They lied to us. We've got to revolt against the system. It would not surprise me if the writers were fans of Red Rising and were kind of cribbing that. But at the same time, it's that thing that I talked about last week in the video about how like two different writers can come up with the same or a similar idea. There's a huge amount of lore, and there are numerous interpretations of the origin of the Transformers between the comics and the TV shows and the movies and stuff that they've done, the animated stuff. I mean, this is a 40-year-old franchise, and it's been in the hands of different creators numerous times over the decades. The general idea is that there was a Transformer god named Primus, and that he created the Transformers, and that they lived on a planet called Cybertron, and then they eventually divided into factions and had a civil war because the leaders, who were Optimus and Megatron, disagreed. There were other figures at the time. There was Vector Sigma, there was Alpha Trion, there was Sentinel Prime, there were the original Primes, there was the Fallen Prime. Like, there was a whole lot of that stuff going on, just depending on who was writing the story. And so you can be like lore adamant, but you've also got to recognize that there are like a dozen different interpretations of the lore. I think they did an excellent job of cribbing from established lore pieces and recognizable names and being true to the spirit of the various interpretations of it, while also trying to set out their own path. Keep in mind that there was only ever a cartoon in 1984 to run as an extended commercial for toys. This whole thing started as toys, and even the movies as they exist now are drivers for toys. And they need to be successful for the studios backing them, sure, but I think Hasbro's metric is going to be like, well, it'll get popular if the toys sell. And between a general economic downturn and consumer numbers being weak, these products as artistic creations have just not been good. But Transformers 1 is. So a hearty endorsement there. Final note, I shared in a community post a video from a channel called Delta Tryon. This is a guy who is writing very well written character essays. He did one about the D16 to Megatron arc, and I think he said that one got struck by Paramount. I listened to it last week; it was incredibly well done, but I guess he used too much of the video stuff from the movie that they didn't want him to use, and so uh, they struck it. Unfortunately, he released another one about the arc for Orion Pax to Optimus Prime. These are extremely good videos, and the D16 one got me excited to watch Transformers this weekend. I saw the announcement that it was going to be on Paramount Plus. I was like, all right, I'll finally get around to watching it anyway. But that one got me excited, and then the payoff for it was excellent. So go check out Delta Trion stuff. I'll link it in the description down below. Anyway, it's midnight. I'm at work. Drive safe. See you out there.